Yo, yo, what's good, YouTube? What's good? It's Stormy B Man, and I am back. Yes, I am back for another Kung Fu Film Focus. Where this evening, for the evening of March 29th, 2020, we are going to cover a film that is a classic in the genre called Dreadnought. The film is from 1981, produced by Golden Harvest Studios, with the elder statesman Raymond Chow presiding over the studio's productions. This film featured one of Golden Harvest Studios' young talents who never quite took off, but he was still a classic performer in the genre, and that's Yuen Biao. Yuen Biao is featured in the photo collage here. He's on the second row, second from the right. That's Yuen Biao. He's a third brother to Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung, who all grew up in the Chinese opera where they performed as a part of the Seven Little Fortunes. The Seven Little Fortunes was an opera troupe that consisted of far more members than seven, but the seven was a golden name and a lucky number name for the troupe, which is why they were called the Seven Little Fortunes, ranging from the young teens all the way down to like 6 or 7 years old. These performers would travel the provinces of China and give shows. They had been taught in acrobatics and also very skilled in weaponry, and basically perform circus-like acts to entertain provinces. So Yuen Biao was the younger of the three who worked together for a number of years: Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, and Yuen Biao. All three were a part of Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon. At one point or another, they performed stunt work. Sammo Hung, the heavyset elder brother, was also the fat guy that took on Bruce Lee in the opening sequence of Enter the Dragon. Jackie Chan was noted in Enter the Dragon in the underground sequence where Bruce Lee was fighting all of Han's men in the underground cavern. He was the one that jumped on Bruce from behind and grabbed him, and Bruce broke out of the grip and turned around and broke his neck. That was Jackie Chan, for many people who didn't know that early before his own particular fame. And Yuen Biao can be seen in shots in Enter the Dragon as one of the tournament karate men performing their punches and kicks, and he's in several different shots. These young men were very much the future for the cinematic experience of action films in Hong Kong. After Bruce Lee died, they would go on and become bigger and bigger statesmen in the game, both in front and behind the camera, and also as stuntmen. Featured in the top row of this collage, we have from left to right Yuen Wu-ping, who was the director of the film and also the lead choreographer, along with his clan of brothers who formed his own stunt team. In the center is Raymond Chow, the former head of Golden Harvest Studios and executive producer of most of the majority of the projects that came out of the studio. He recently passed away a couple years ago. And Yuen Kat-yor, who is the younger Yuen brother, to the right of Raymond Chow. In the second row of the collage, we have Yuen Ki, who, that sister is very famous for being one of the women who led the martial arts films in the early 70s. She took a break and came back in the early 2000s as the head landlady in Stephen Chow's Kung Fu Hustle. If you ever saw that film, she was the landlady with the rollers in her hair and everything, and that's her at an older age. But she was featured in the early 70s in the James Bond film Live and Let Die. She was a part of the Asian martial arts connection in that film, where Roger Moore was taking on some of the martial arts experts when they had done the scenes over in China. Originally, Bruce Lee was supposed to have a role in that film as well, but he had died before he had the opportunity. He was going to play that inspector who Ewing Clan also worked under in that film. The second to her is Sonny Yuen, who's also a brother of Yuen Wu-ping, the director of the film and head choreographer. He's one of the leading stuntmen and has been for the past 40 years in Hong Kong films, and he has choreographed films as well as directed. But in this film, he plays a leading role. He's the masked killer in this film, Dreadnaught. And early in the film, Ewing Clan and he are husband and wife, and she's pregnant with child. Next to him is Lily Lee, who was famously known for being a part of the Shaw Brothers studio. She played in numerous Shaw films, one in particular where she played in Executioner of Shaolin, and there were just so many. Challenge of the Masters. She can be seen in numerous Shaw Brothers films. She was very young at the time, and believe it or not, after giving some recent interviews, she still looks the same. And again, to round out that role is Yuan Biao, the leading star of the film, and Liang Chi Yan, who is known as Beardy throughout the martial arts community. And Beardy was also known as someone in the Shaw Studios. That's where he got his break. He started out playing villains, and then he eventually parlayed his way to being a hero. And one of his most famous films is working with Sammo Hung in the film The Victim, where he was the lead actor, a great martial artist, a man who has always laid the stake that he never studied martial arts. But don't believe that. Liang Chi Yan was too great athletically and performed his skills to such excellence that could not possibly be believed. And featured at the bottom, and not as disrespect, but to put him in his own class, is the elder statesman of Hong Kong film industry as far as martial arts movie, Quanta King. Quanta King is noted in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the one actor in the world who has played one character nearly 100 times. And he played Wong Fei Hung in this film. It was his last role as Wong Fei Hung on the cinematic level. And way into his 80s, this man was performing and doing great work. He was noted as Wong Fei Hung on film, but had played the role so much to the degree that people just totally identified him as Wong Fei Hung in real life. He carried the role well. He carried that reputation of being an outstanding, upstanding individual. And he taught martial arts. He was a real life martial artist. And he brought so much to that role. It wasn't until Jackie Chan in the late 70s came back and performed in Drunken Monkey and the Tiger's Eye, also known as the Drunken Master, where he played a new era Wong Fei Hung, playing a young, brash, naughty Wong Fei Hung. A total different take on the character than Quanta King had played for so many years. Jackie Chan brought the character back as a modern day younger person, and the film audiences loved it. They loved the comical aspect that he brought, along with his physical, athletic, and acrobatic abilities. And Drunken Master went on to become one of the biggest hits in Hong Kong history, displacing Bruce Lee's films at the box office and making Jackie a star in his own right. Now, back to Dreadnought. Dreadnought is a feature that opens up where Ewing Clan and Sonny Yuen are traveling the roads, and they happen upon a tea house. They're actually bandits who are on the run. She's pregnant with child, and she carries this chime on her ankle. It's like a bell. And as they enter this little tea house, they notice that there are a bunch of men working in the tea house, no customers, and a particular man is cooking so much food. And she tells her husband, Sonny Yuen, who in the film is called Tiger, she's like, Tiger, you know, there's something up here. We're coming into this diner, and all of these men are working, but there are no customers. So she's like, I don't like this. Something is wrong here. And so soon enough, all of the men reveal themselves to be, they reveal themselves to be cops undercover who are looking to capture them. And it is at that moment that a huge fight breaks out, as in all films that have, all Kung Fu films that have a tea house. You can always expect a fight to break out in a tea house. And so as they began to fight in battle, Ewing Clan is hurt, and she's fatally hurt. And she tells her husband, Tiger, to run. But before he takes off, he avenges her death on the spot by murdering the majority of the officers who are there to capture them. But he also escapes with her body, and he's further on the run. One of the surviving cops, he plays dead so he can go back and tell, you know, his chief official what has transpired. This film features some of the best martial arts action that you would see in this time period of 1981. The Ewing Clan, as they were known, who provided action for a lot of martial arts films and action films, period. Their action was based on a lot of athleticism, nice flips and tumbles, falling from dangerous heights, landing on a surface, and they also used props extremely well. In their action films, you could see things taking place like broken furniture, guys crashing from distances, falling from balconies and falling into furniture and breaking up through walls and things like that. And they were really noted for that type of action, and no one was better at it than these particular guys. A lot of it looked painful. You could tell people got hurt while making these films, and it was no accident that they moved to #1 in the industry after a while. Sammo Hung himself had used these guys to perform when he was directing films, and he would also recruit some of their tactics as far as using the camera angles to show off the action at its optimum. That was another staple for Hong Kong action films, where they could show the action from various angles and capture it in a manner that makes it look extremely real, and also at the same time impactful as well as dynamic. These men really knew what they were doing. Yuen Wu-ping was later recruited by the Wachowski brothers when they decided to launch their Matrix franchise. They were looking to combine the aesthetics of modern digital cinema along with Kung Fu, Hong Kong Kung Fu style action, and thus the Matrix type action was born. Yuen Wu-ping was the author of that. They sought out him and his crew, and that's where you got such dynamic action in Hollywood coming forward. Even when a film like Charlie's Angels was made with Drew Barrymore and the other ladies that were cast along with her, the action that they were doing in that film came from Yuen Wu-ping. And Jet Li also used his choreography a great deal in the films that made him famous in Hong Kong, as well as some of his American productions. Romeo Must Die, where he did with Aaliyah, the Ewing Clan were brought in to provide the action in that film. Dreadnought, the story of Tiger after his wife was murdered. He was a villain on the run, and he saw no way to be out in the open, so he sought refuge by an old friend of his who was a part of the Peking opera troupe, okay, in that town. And so when he came across his friend, he sought sanctuary, and the friend was like, I can't help you. You know, you're an evil guy on the run. He was like, but if you could help me do something, maybe I would have a place for you. So he basically bribed his buddy who was on the run and asked him to be a part of a operation where he wanted to take down Quanta King's Wong Fei Hung character in the film. Wong Fei Hung had defeated him in a lion's dance. And if anybody knows anything about Hong Kong action films and lion's dances, the lion's dance is a very significant aspect of Kung Fu films, Kung Fu dojos performing. And when they perform in the provinces and they have lion's dances, the school who wins a lion's dance, they typically get a reward which will allow them to have proceeds that will take care of their dojos for like the next year or so. So it's like an annual thing that they do where they perform. And the one thing that you could see when these guys are performing is that the lion's dances are consisted of very choreographed movements, and they're looking to physically go after something that they have to retrieve as a reward. It's usually some type of makeshift amulet or something, and they have to climb and they have to dance up high and go across ropes and stuff like that to become victorious and achieve whatever it is that the amulet that they're trying to grasp. Once they do that, they win the tournament, the lion's dance. So Philip Kofi, who's the villain in this film, and we've seen him in countless films over time, he has a grudge against Wong Fei Hung after that. And he tried to attack Wong Fei Hung in an illegal manner and everything, and ended up getting defaced himself. His face was severely burned. So he had a grudge against Wong Fei Hung after that, and he wanted to pay him back. So he thought that getting his buddy Tiger to be a part of things, maybe Tiger could help him in some kind of nefarious way take down Wong Fei Hung. But while he's hiding out with Philip Kofi, Tiger, he keeps running across Yuen Biao, who is wearing a necklace that has the bells on it, similar to like his wife's bells that were on her ankle. And every time he hears that jingle, it makes him think of his wife and everything. And he wants to kill the guy when he sees or hears those bells. Yeah, Tiger is a little bit of he's a mental subject here where he's crazy. And he may have been crazy before his wife was killed. And I think that is kind of implied in the story. But Kofi, featured here, is telling, Tiger that I can help you if you help me. And he wants him to help him take down Wong Fei Hung. The funny thing about that is that Yuen Biao, who is the young star of the film, as he runs around with the amulet around his neck, and he's featured here with Lily Lee, who's playing his elder sister. They run like a laundry business, and she's been tabbing him to go collect the money from the community when they do laundry for people. And what's also amazing is that Lily Lee, she doesn't get to show off her fighting prowess in this film, but we find out that the technique that she uses to dry the laundry is like an eagle's claw technique. And she's been teaching young Yuen Biao to dry the laundry that way, and he thinks it's just a tiresome gesture that she's taught him instead of making it more simple. And she was secretly teaching him their family kung fu, but she never told him that until a moment later in the film. So he's actually got very strong hands and fingers because he's been doing this for years, but he didn't know. And he's kind of a goofy guy where he's very scary and things like that. So people around town treat him like a chump. They don't pay him the money when he goes to collect, and they bully him around and everything. And he finds himself just always disappointing his elder sister. It's kind of a funny take on things because Yuen Biao, he's very athletic and he's very capable with martial arts technique. But they're holding back on that in the film on purpose. Now, he befriends a student of Wong Fei Hong who is called Foon. Now, played by Liang Chi Yan. They're here together in this photo here. Liang Chi Yan in this film playing Foon, he's like always eager to show off his martial arts. He wants to fight at the drop of a hat. And when he comes across Yuen Biao, he realizes, and Yuen Biao in the film, his name is Peanut. Okay, that's what they call him. So when he comes across Peanut, he realizes that Peanut is like a little weakling and everything. He wants to defend him and everything and teach him to be stronger and stuff like that. And then he eventually befriends him and tells him that he ought to try to become a student of Wong Fei Hong, where he can learn kung fu to protect himself. They have a series of incidents where he helps Peanut collect the money that these bullies won't pay him back, and different people who have used their laundry services. And as I said, they quickly become friends, but Foon is doing it for the fighting opportunities more than anything, and he relishes beating people up. So it's kind of like a little bit of a comedy in there where this is played out. A lot of people will remember Liang Chi Yan from other films, especially when he plays villains and stuff like that. So in this film, it's a bit of a different take for him. And it was later in his career after he was with Shaw Brothers and started making more independent films. The senior Wong Fei Hong in the film, again played by Quanta King, is always revered and respected in the community, and he has a chance or two in the film to show his martial prowess. And there's always someone who's respectful of Wong Fei Hong's name, and then there are others who want to challenge him because they heard he was such an upstanding and virtuous man who knew kung fu. So in this photo shot here, we see a tailor who was assigned to measure up Wong Fei Hong for a suit. And this guy slipped in and pretended to be the actual tailor. What happened to the real tailor, we never found out. But he comes in and he tries to challenge Wong Fei Hong's kung fu and is easily dealt with. But the man who was challenging was Fong Fu, who is a veteran martial arts stuntman, bad guy, and great martial artist in his own right from numerous films. You could see him when he was in Warriors 2. He was in such films as, I think he was in Jackie Chan's Drunken Master as well. But he was always a bad guy and a guy to get his butt whooped from time to time. So it's like, Fong Fu, he does what he does well. He was in Last Hurrah for Chivalry, a role that I really liked that he played in that film because he walked around town and he told people that his name was Prey. And when they asked him why was his name Prey, why was he named Prey, and he was like, because when he fights people, he pray when he kill them. And it's like he was a great swordsman in there who met his fate, and that was just one of his standout roles. But back to Dreadnought. As things wind up, Tiger, who is found out at the opera troupe, he has to disguise himself now. And when he goes totally bonkers in the film, he decides to take some of the opera troupe's makeup, and he dons the makeup for himself, where he becomes a character that looks like what we see on the camera right here, this photo of him. He puts the Peking opera makeup on his face, and he goes around and he's killing people with this makeup on his face. He just becomes a mass killer, and that's what they call him, the mask killer. And as he's doing his evil deeds, Peanut runs across him several times because he's wearing that chime around his neck that reminds Tiger of his deceased wife. And Tiger really wants to kill Peanut because he keeps getting away from him. He's slippery as an eel. Every time he jumps out to try to get him, Peanut happens to escape and get away. This film features some great martial arts action by Sonny Yuen, pictured again here as the masked killer. Sonny played in films such as the Buddhist Fist, where he had a starring role, and he was very outstanding in that, where he played a monk that was a martial artist, and he fought another monk from the temple. They were good friends, and they ended up having to fight each other at the end. Great martial arts action in that film. If you've never seen Buddhist Fist, please check it out. It's one of the greatest martial art films and greatest action choreographed films out of Hong Kong in the history of Hong Kong cinema. Great film. But in here, he shows his prowess again with his punches, kicks, flips, and falls, because he takes a lot of impactful falls in this film. His acrobatics are second to none. And it's amazing how the Yuen brothers and Ewing Clan perform their martial abilities, because these men were just outstanding at what they did. There was something else about them that I wanted to let you all know, is that the old man who played the Drunken Master in Jackie Chan's film, The Drunken Master, he's the father in real life of the Ewing Clan, the Yuen brothers. That man is their father. And they learned martial arts from the time that they were small boys, and it showed because of their prowess. Yuen Wuping was the oldest, and the rest of the brothers, Yuen Kak-chor, Sonny Yuen here, and there were several other Yuen brothers that all make up the Ewing Clan as far as their stunt team. These men were excellent martial artists in real life. Dreadnought also features another Hong Kong star who had been around for a number of years, and he's actually featured here in this photo, Fong Mei Shan. Fong Mei Shan was a burly man in the Hong Kong film industry, and he always played a strong man, a bad guy, or whatever. If you all saw the film Seven Blows of the Dragon, you know, he played Black Whirlwind, the guy with the two axes. And he is famous also for being the father of a young man that played in the film The Story of Ricky. And later on in the Yip Man movies, he played the bad guy who ended up turning decent against I'm trying to think, Donnie Yen in the Yip Man movies. In the first Yip Man movie, he was the guy that came to town, and he was like, "Oh, I thought everyone in this town was Wong Fei Hung," and he was beating up people. That's Fan Mei Xiang's son. And so it's like Fan Mei Xiang, he was around Hong Kong for a long time. He started out with the Shaw Brothers Studios and made most of his films with those guys. Very, very outstanding character actor. Always made his mark in the films that he played in. And in this film, he happens to play a good guy for a change. He's playing the inspector who's trying to investigate the murders that Tiger is committing around the town. And he's playing a bit of a goofy inspector because every time he arrives on the scene, he's too late, and he can't find the actual bad guy, and he's just a step behind and all that. And his troop of cops under him are every bit as goofy as he is, if not more goofy. So they're brought in as comedy relief in this film, and it works. There are some very funny moments in Dreadnought. And that's the one thing about a Hong Kong film, is that you would get a ton of different types of stories in one movie. It's like they did that, and they didn't apologize for it either. Sometimes it worked to perfection because it would be so odd that it's good, and then sometimes you just kind of scratch your head and go, what the hell was this? So they were noted for this, and they didn't mind. They were very unapologetic about making films like this that had overlapping storylines. Another thing about the end fight sequence is that these guys, they all came together at the end of the film to come up against Tiger and Kofi. And those two guys who were causing most of the problem in the film, they finally get their comeuppance, but not in the manner of which you may feel that it was going to happen. Pete finally decides to take it upon himself to be heroic. And it is after we lose Foon in the middle of the film. Foon is killed by these guys. They trick him, and they both attack him basically in the dark. And then they send his body back to Wong Fei Hung. It's a sad moment in the film because it's at that moment that Peanut, he realizes that his only friend in life was Foon. And Foon looked out after him. He took care of him. He fought for him and just basically was a great friend. And he wanted to avenge Foon's death. And both he and Wong Fei Hung set out to find these baddies. It's at that point when they come across the baddies at the end of the film, and Wong Fei Hung is injured in his leg, and he can't really fight to his optimum. So it is left for Peanut to take over there. And that's when Peanut develops some confidence on the spot, and his anger and his angst for losing his friend and everything these bad guys have done and how long he's been terrorized by these guys. And so he goes into a mode of fighting back, which is partially believable, but also because his sister had been secretly teaching him Eagle's Claw, which Wong Fei Hung identifies right away when he sees Peanut does a technique with his hands and fingers. Wong Fei Hung has been around a long time. He's a very old man in the film and in real life, and he's able to call it on sight what he notices that Peanut is doing with his hands. So that was pretty cool that he's acknowledging that Peanut knows Kung Fu without even knowing Kung Fu. So Wong Fei Hung had let the audience in on that as he observed it. This film was a film that was up for awards when it came down to Hong Kong Film Awards with the choreography. The feature choreography was something that a lot of the audiences always tuned in to these type of movies for. It was like they wanted to see how these guys would take the fighting to the next level, and they were able to do that. In some of the scenes where you see Liang Chi Yan, who played Foon, when you see him execute his movements, you know why that he became a star within his own right, because his kung fu looks authentic. It looks real. The techniques, he handles them with perfection, and he is extremely athletic with what he does. Again, he has said over time that he never really studied martial arts. I do not believe that at all. This man was too awesome with choreography that he could handle and execute to have not known any martial arts at all. That's just totally unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Maybe he's extremely humble and don't want to reveal, but I'm sorry. I've seen guys who have studied martial arts for numerous years and can't execute movements like he can. Liang Chi Yan is a true legend of the genre with what he has performed and the way he has performed. Ewing Biao also had another starring role around the same time as this film, a film he did called Knockabout. And in that film, he's got Sammo in there with him, and Lao Kao Yang, who was also the fight choreographer for Five Fingers of Death, the last film that I featured. And that film also shows Sammo and Ewing Biao doing and executing martial art techniques that hadn't been done before on film. Seeing Ewing Biao jumping rope with bamboo twigs taped to the back of his legs so that his legs don't bend, and he's doing flip-flops without his legs bending, and if you see them bend, you can see the bamboo sticks sticking into the skin of his legs. Oh my goodness, that was real stuff, people. That was real stuff. And they had him jumping rope at first, and then he doing no hand flip-flops in place with keeping his legs straight. We're talking about physical feats that, you know, guys today wouldn't even dream of doing. These guys were doing that stuff for real back then. And that all came from that Peking opera training that they had as little boys. And Sammo being the senior brother, Degas, it's like he led the way in the industry. He became the stuntman first. He became a choreographer first. He became a director first. And the brothers Jackie and then later Ewan, they followed suit. But Sammo was the most accomplished as far as doing it across the board. Jackie became the biggest individual star, and Ewan probably was the best stuntman out of the three. So they all had something that they did equally and that they shone in their own way. Their star shined in its own way. It just a tribute to how great that these men were with their contributions to the genre. There's a film called Painted Faces, and it's a depiction of their life growing up in the Peking Opera. And the three boys, along with many of the others who were a part of the Seven Little Fortunes opera troupe, who also became action stars and stuntmen in their own rights. That film, Painted Faces, kind of tells their story. And even Jackie says that the film, it doesn't do what happened to them in real life justice, because he said basically if people knew the abuse that went on for them, you know, they could never tell that publicly. But their bodies were put through from a young age extreme trials where it was just totally abuse to do this to these kids as they were coming up in that troupe. And these guys survived and became the best that you could ever see on film as a result. And he said that's why you couldn't see those type of performances today physically, because they is just considered is considered to be abuse. And having to stand on their hands for hours at a time, hanging upside down, being in horse stance positions and back bending positions where your body was being stretched in two different directions. I mean, it was like the things that were done to them could never really be openly told, because it not only is it cringeworthy for audiences, but it also speaks to how could someone let that type of cruelty go on with these young boys who became men, but also the fruits of their labors, performed out in front of the cameras in these films. Some of the feats that you see them do is just astronomical. Yuen Biao had a very advanced kicking style that he was often brought in to do spectacular kicks and double for people who couldn't do these simple kicks according to him, but amazing kicks, nonetheless. One of his noted stunt double performances was in the remake of Bruce Lee's Game of Death, where he doubled for the shadow actor who was brought in to play Bruce Lee in the scenes where Bruce wasn't alive, to do the performances himself. So Yuen Biao doubled for that guy a lot, and he was physically able to execute a lot of kicks that even the real martial artist Tang Long, who played in the film Kim Tai Chung, he couldn't execute certain kicks. Even though he was a Taekwondo expert, Yuen Biao would come in and double for him. There was just an amazing amount of stunt choreography being done in the mid 70s and early 80s that you just couldn't wrap your mind around what these guys were doing. There should be more tributes for these gentlemen and their accomplishments. Dreadnought was a film that really, it doesn't have a true storyline, but it was another opportunity to bring these men together to perform athletic feats in front of the camera and present it to you as an audience of action, and that's what that was. And that's what a number of Kung Fu films were. They didn't have much of a story. They probably could write the script on one page of paper and leave the rest of the action to you, the audience's imagination. And they did this so well that became the staple that they hung their hat on. As I said, Dreadnought opens with a tea house moment. And as I've said in many of my other reviews, when there's a tea house, there's some fighting going down. It's a must for a Kung Fu film. You got to have, like a fight scene in the tea house. That's just like in a love story. You got to have the two people go to bed, right? Well, guess what? They going to bed in the tea house. This is what they doing. They fighting. They getting it on. You understand? And in Kung Fu movies, it's always that way. And then when you have a martial arts studio, and in this case, it's Wong Fei Hong's school, somebody's always opposing the other school. They're going to come in there and we're going to show you we the best, and we're going to tear your sign down, and you got to close shop and all of this. This again, the Lions Dance. They won the Lions Dance. The bad guy's like, I'm going to get you for that. You understand? So it's like there's no way around fighting in a Kung Fu film. It just ain't going to happen, And there's never guns. That's why these stories are done like in old dates, old times or whatever, not modern times where they're driving cars and stuff. There's no guns. So it's like you have to learn to fight with your hands and your feet the Kung Fu way. And that's understandable. You know, it's like otherwise, if you put guys in modern times and somebody's breaking out with these moves and stuff, and you got the other guy saying, man, forget that. And he reaches for his strap. I mean, come on. You know what I mean? The Kung Fu movie will be over in 5 minutes. so, so we have to see these guys perform their feats and what feats there are. I mean, the acrobatic ability, the long takes. That's another thing that is featured in films like this, where you see them in a fight scene and they're performing like 100 moves in one take. And the camera, and what that means is basically the choreography is taking place and the camera is capturing it all at one time in one shot. And when they finish those moves, then the camera angle may change to something else. The only other time that there's a quick camera change is if there happens to be a moment where a substitute stuntman has to step in for somebody who can't do something. And in this case, we saw it with Quanta King being like almost 90 years old. In certain fight scenes that he had, Ewing would double for him himself. So it was like the camera, you know, he'd do a move and the camera would show a different angle and show his back or something and his head turn and he's still fighting and doing moves, but it's not Quanta King anymore. It's Ewing doubling for him. And then when they show Quanta King from the front or the side where you can see it's him, he's still capable of doing a lot of techniques and everything. So you see him doing horse stance maneuvers and you actually see him doing his fist movements and stuff like that. Sometimes raising a leg for a kick or sticking it out and holding it up in the air and stuff like that, showing his flexibility and his dexterity, but also showing that at the age that he was still able to perform as magnificently as he could. So that was one of the things you have to really admire about Quanta King. The other aspect of this choreography that was featured in this film is seeing so many of the stuntmen have roles where you didn't have to double the stuntmen. That's where you got the greatest action. And Hong Kong really took off once they realized that they could make the action stunt guys the stars of films. That way they could go all out. And that's how you got the best and the maximum action out of these films, when you saw these guys who didn't have to be subbed, you understand, or replaced, and they could just do the action. They may have had to do something with several different takes, but they didn't have to replace who was on camera because the guy that was on camera was more than capable. That's outstanding stuff right there. And that speaks volumes about the talent that was out there and their creativity behind the camera of what they would come up with as feats of action for the viewing audience. I have to take my hat off to these people who could produce such action. And like I said, the genre had come a long way. Bruce Lee died in 1973, and a lot of these men were around, and they found a way to raise the bar in his absence, because he had begun to raise the bar but wasn't around long enough to make a staple for himself. But these men did carry the mantle of providing on-screen action in a manner of which most people had no clue. You understand? And they were more than capable. They provided audiences with action for years. And I was one of the main ones that was constantly tuning in to these guys, seeing what they were capable of doing and loving every moment of it. It's something that I like to talk about, and that's why I do these features. You know, when I have these shows talking about the stories with these guys and the movies that they made and things like that, this is what it's all about. I remember catching them from a very young age, even as I had become older and coming into myself as an adult, and I watched action films. I do critique the action, as I'm looking at it, because I realize what I'm accustomed to, what I've been adjusted to, and what I recall being outstanding and what's not, And many years later, Hollywood decided to start trying to lift some of these action sequences and put them in other films of today that and pass it off as their own. You know what I mean? There was a film, the Batman movie. I think it was Batman Forever. It might have been. It was one of the Batman movies from the early 90s that lifted an action sequence from this very film, Dreadnought, with Yuen Biao and Lily Lee. The laundry sequence. There was something that they lifted from this film for that. And they tried to pass it off as something that they were doing on their own. But it was almost a shot-for-shot reenactment. And that is stuff like that where, when people are trying to steal what was an original, that you have arrived. You know what I'm saying? So that's something to say about these kind of films. There was another action film from the early 90s where they tried to recreate something from a Jackie Chan film, Police Story, when all the cars were going down the hill and running over those steel homes and stuff like that. They recreated that in an American action film. And the thing was, Jackie set that up the first time. He did it. It was his creative idea. It was his direction and his stunt team's action. And they produced that, and it stood out back then when they did it, and it still stands out to this day. And even when these American studios try to recreate it on their own and make it like, oh, we just came up with this. Bull crap. We got the receipts. For us Hong Kong action lovers, we could tell you exactly when we see it where you got it from. At least the Wachowskis went over in Hong Kong, the Matrix, what they were doing. They didn't try to recreate what Yuen Wu Ping had done in the past. They asked him to come over and show to go at him doing this. And hey, when they come with respect, what can you do? You go. You understand? You go. But yep, that's what it is. So, but that's, I want to say that's all I have for you this evening, brothers and sisters out there, because this particular film, Dreadnought, was a very good action film from the genre. It is a classic, and if you haven't checked it out, I'm sure it's out there on Amazon Prime. You could check it out. It may even be on YouTube still. But Dreadnought is a great kung fu film / thriller / action comedy. So it's a thriller because Tiger becomes a killer in the film, and he's killing people, and they're trying to solve the mystery of who's doing the murdering. But there are some funny sequences there, as well as some tremendous kung fu action. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it's from 1981. It's Dreadnought starring Yuen Biao. Okay? And check it out. It's a pretty damn good kung fu film. And that's all I have for you this evening. Thank you for listening to me. This is Stormy B Man. And to everyone that's out there, I hope you're having a wonderful evening. Continue to be safe and hold fast to your promises. Pandemic crisis out here. And respect to everybody. Have a great night. And I'll see you on the other side, and we'll catch you up with another film in the not too distant future. Look like Stormy B Man will be dropping these a little more regular because we have a little more time. So much respect to you guys. Peace out. Love you all. Catch you next time.